Hello and welcome back for another timeless video. Today we'll be taking a look at this mono blue show and tell deck. The premise of the deck is to cast the 3-mana sorcery show and tell, which lets each player put an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land from their hand onto the battlefield. The main card that we are trying to put in off of this is Omniscience, which is normally a 10-mana enchantment, and it lets us cast spells from our hand without paying their mana costs. This essentially will let us play our entire deck and win the game. We'll get to the win condition in a little bit. Another card that we can cheat in off of show and tell is the Atraxa Grand Unifier, a 7-mana legendary Phyrexian Angel with flying, vigilance, death touch, and lifelink. When this 7/7 creature enters the battlefield, we also reveal the top 10 cards of our library, and then for each card type, we may put a card of that type from the revealed cards into our hand, and then the rest get put on the bottom of our library in a random order. Atraxa is a good threat against decks if you're trying to win the game fairly, and it's also a good way to refuel your hand and further dig for the show and tell Omniscience combo. Once we have Omniscience in play, our primary win condition is digging through our deck until we get one of the 2 copies of Fae of Wishes, and then using its adventure granted to reveal a non-creature card we own from outside the game and put it in our hand. The card that we will be grabbing is the Mastermind's Acquisition from our sideboard. This card lets us either search our library for a card and put it in our hand, or search our sideboard for a card and put it in our hand. So what we'll do with the first copy is grab a second copy, and then with the second copy, we will grab the Bond of Insight. This 4-mana sorcery has each player mill 4 cards, and then we can return 2 instant and or sorcery cards from our graveyard to our hand. And the 2 cards that we'll be returning are both of the Mastermind's Acquisitions. Then we can use the first one to grab an Approach of the Second Sun out of our sideboard, and this will get shuffled into our deck. And then we can use the second one either to grab the copy that was just shuffled into our deck, or we can grab the redundant copy that we have here in the sideboard. And when we cast this for the second time, we will win the game. To support this combo, we have 2 copies of Brainstorm, a 1-mana instant, which lets us draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from our hand on top of our library in any order. We don't have many shuffle effects in the deck, which is why we're only running 2 copies of this. If we were playing fetch lands, we would want the full set of 4. We're running the full set of Ponder, a 1-mana sorcery, which lets us look at the top 3 cards of our library and then put them back in any order. Then we can draw a card, or we can shuffle the deck if we don't like the 3 cards that we've seen. 4 copies of Stock Up, a 3-mana sorcery that lets us look at the top 5 cards of our library and put 2 of them into our hand and the rest on the bottom of our library. And then 2 copies of Dig Through Time, an 8-mana instant with Delve, meaning that we can exile cards from our graveyard to pay 1 of the generic mana pips. And this lets us look at the top 7 cards of our library and put 2 of them into our hand. Mainly this card is in here to cast off of the Omniscience, but occasionally in a grindy matchup, we might cast this for its Delve cost. Then for interaction, we have 4 copies of Mana Drain. This 2-mana instant lets us counter target spell. And then at the beginning of our next main phase, we get to add the amount of colorless mana equal to that spell's mana value. This usually will help us ramp out cards like our Stock Up or Show and Tell. If we counter larger mana value spells, this could even let us play our Dig Through Time or Omniscience. For one of the flex spots, we've decided to run 4 copies of Stifle. We can use this to clip opponents' fetch lands, stop cards from transforming like a Johnny. Can be used against Oops All spells to stop the Balustrade Spies Enter the Battlefield ability, and other activated or triggered abilities that we might need to interact with. And then for the mana base, we have 4 copies of Luring Revealed, which we can island cycle. If we have Omniscience in play, we can also cast this 5-mana sorcery to draw 3 cards. We have 4 copies of Chrome Mox for fast mana. And then for the lands, there are 6 basic islands, 4 Ancient Tomb for fast mana, and then 8 MDFC cards, 4 Sink into Stupor, which occasionally can be used to bounce a permanent from our opponent's side of the field. Notably, if we cast Show and Tell and our opponent puts in something like a Static Prison, we are able to cast Sink into Stupor in response to the Static Prison's triggered ability and bounce it back to our opponent's hand. And that way it doesn't remove our Atraxa or Omniscience from the battlefield. And then lastly, there are 4 copies of Seagate Restoration. This 7 mana sorcery allows us to draw cards equal to the number of cards in our hand plus 1. And then we also get a emblem with no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. So once we have Omniscience in play, this is a great way to dig through our deck to find our remaining combo pieces. And it can also be played as a land, either tapped or by paying 3 life to have it come in untapped. Both of these MDFC lands can also be pitched to the Chrome Mox, which is a huge advantage, being an additional colored card that we can use for fast mana depending on what we have in our hand and what we feel is optimal. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. We are on the play. This hand is missing fast mana. So if our opponent is able to play something meaningful on turn 1, we have no interaction. We don't have a Stifle for a fetch land. I think we're going to mulligan this. This has a turn 1 Show and Tell into Omniscience. It'll be a keep. We do have to pitch the Stifle to Chrome Mox. Then Atraxa is the great follow-up. Island is fine as long as our opponent doesn't have a card like Stifle or Force Spike. If we get a turn here, we can hold up Mana Drain. We are missing our Show and Tell. We do have a stock up in hand. We'll give it a try. You're not going to have Show and Tell in every hand, so you are going to have to keep hands where you have interaction for what your opponent's doing and the ability to dig for it. Hedge Maze means we could be going up against a Show and Tell mirror. Here I think we imprint the Sink into Stupor. That way we have more interaction for our opponent. Mystic Sanctuary also points towards the Show and Tell deck. Now we did telegraph our interaction by bolting in our land. Our opponent goes for it. We'll counter that. Using the mana from Mana Drain, we can stock up. Here we'll grab an Omniscience. And what else do we want? We don't have any instant speed interaction outside of Mana Drain if our opponent can fire it again. We could take the land. And then we'll pass the turn. If our opponent tries another Show and Tell and we Mana Drain it, then we would be able to hard cast Omniscience next turn, but we would need to find some action to follow up with at the moment. Collective Resistance, destroying our Chrome Mox. That's fine. And we will continue to be patient here. If we can help it, we'd like to try and keep Seagate Restoration in our hand. Dig Through Time will definitely counter, and this will allow us to hardcast our Omniscience. So this should be game over here. We'll take another Atraxa, enchantment, sink into stupor, land, and Lorien Revealed. So before casting our Seagate, we want to cast all of the cards that are card positive in our hand. So that would include the other Atraxa here. And our opponent concedes. There is a very high probability we would have been able to combo off here. This hand is good. It's missing a payoff for Show and Tell, but we have 8 of them in the deck. We do need to bolt ourselves here. And we will actually imprint one of the Fae of Wishes, which means we only have one left in the deck. Looks like we could be up against the energy deck. We will counter the Ocelot Pride. Using the floating mana, we'll go grab an island. And then we'll pass the turn. Amp Raptor, we will let go. And they hit a second Amp Raptor. Again, we're just looking for either an Atraxa or an Omniscience. Cantrips are good too. Another Amp Raptor. Our opponent has quite a bit of value on their side. We won't have many turns to figure out what we're doing. And then we will counter the Ocelot Pride again. There is Omniscience, so if our opponent does have Static Prison, we can still use Dig Through Time. Atraxa is great, and then we'll take the stock up. Start on Atraxa. We'll take another Atraxa, Brainstorm, and our opponent throws in the towel. This hand has a turn 2 Show and Tell. We'll keep it. If we're willing to pitch one of our lands, we can hold up Mana Drain, which I think is fine. Our opponent is likely to have a turn 2 play. If not, we are in no rush. Grazer's fine, no need to counter that. We will need to draw into some more action with Lorien Revealed. Our opponent can tutor up their lands. Let's see what we get. Unfortunately, that won't do, but our opponent concedes. So we whiffed there, and our opponent threw in the towel early. I don't blame them. Here we don't have any interaction. On the draw, I think we need a better hand. Turn 2 Mana Drain. Bit slow, but I don't think we can go lower. Our opponent also taking quite a few mulligans, so if they don't find what they're looking for either, and we do get to hold up 2 mana, we should be in a pretty good spot. Otherwise, we could be in a lot of trouble. Alright, looks like it could be an affinity deck from our opponent. Going down to 4 cards is not what they're looking for. Let's see what they held on to. Maybe an Emery. Nope, so here we get to hold up mana drain, so we should be in a pretty dominating position. They do sacrifice their Bauble, which means Opal is even more cards away from being turned on. We will Island Cycle here. I think we'll do it twice. With 2 stock up in hand, we're pretty well stacked if we do get Show and Tell. And we're not going to tap out of our protection. Opponent makes the first move, we'll counter that. This will allow us to stock up and hold up our other mana drain. These are not great. We'll definitely take the stock up. And then for the other card, probably Seagate Restoration. We'll pass it back. Still hold that mana drain. Ancient Tomb is great. This will allow us to continue to stock up while holding up our interaction. There's the Omniscience. And then we can grab Dig Through Time. And I think we wait until next turn. No need to risk tapping out if we don't have to. And our opponent concedes. I think we had that one anyway. This hand is very slow. 2 Atraxa, no interaction. It has to be a mulligan. Here we have some stifles to interact with our opponent, the ponder to dig. We don't have good mana, but we don't want to go too deep. Opponent likely just on a Rakdos deck here. Could be Moonshadow with some Goyfs. We'll hold up Stifle. Already up to 3 mana. Unfortunately, we have to let that go. Duress, take what you want. We have nothing good. I probably would have taken the Sink into Stupor. We can stifle this now. And our opponent has a looting. So now that we've seen more non-permanent spells from our opponent, I'm not really quite sure what deck they're playing. We'll ponder. We don't want this. We'll shuffle. And then I think we play the land tapped. We could hold up Stifle again, but it's not likely to matter. Here we can brainstorm or stock up. I think we'll stock up this turn. Here we find a Show and Tell and a Seagate Restoration. Just need to find an Omniscience. Atraxa would also probably stabilize this game. The DRCs do need to attack each combat at the moment. So here we'll brainstorm. Hopefully we don't brainstorm lock ourselves. And we do find the Atraxa. So here we will put back the Seagate Restoration and one of the Mana Drain. And then we will try Show and Tell. Our opponent puts in nothing. So we'll start with the Lorien. We'll take a land, Mana Drain, and the Atraxa. Not the best hits. Notably, our opponent can use the Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice the DRC that we're blocking, but they decide to use Stitcher Supplier instead. I believe that was objectively a mistake. So this is going to be a Underworld Breach combo deck. They are just digging for the breach. Did they find it? They do need another mana. Looks like they didn't get it yet. And now we'll be able to hold up Mana Drain the rest of the game. So our opponent has a very slim chance of winning. We'll attack in. Here we can stock up, I guess. I don't think we need 2 Mana Drain in one turn, and our opponent concedes. This hand is not any good. This one also has 2 dead cards. On 5, I think we have to keep this. And then with our mana, we'll put back both of the Loriens. Alternatively, we could keep one Lorien and put back a Brainstorm. We'll try this, and hopefully Stifle is able to interrupt what our opponent's doing. The Lorien's a little bit more useful in case our opponent has a Strip Mine. And I do think we cycle right away. There is 1/2 of our combo. We have Merfolk on the other side of the battlefield. So we will stock up. Do they have a Spell Pierce? Force Spike? Not yet. So Atraxa is something we can put in off of Show and Tell. We already have a Stifle in hand. Chrome Mox could be an additional mana to try and play around Soft Permission. Alternatively, we could get the Lorien Revealed, and that would act as a land as well if we cycle it. Between Chrome Mox and Lorien Revealed, I think we'll take the Lorien. It has the higher upside if we don't need to cycle it and find an Omniscience. If our opponent taps out here, then we don't need to go find another island. Hexcatcher is fine. Means our Show and Tell will cost an additional 2 mana at the moment. So we do need that island. And we'll play out the Ancient Tomb and try Show and Tell. They do have the Force of Negation. Nothing we can do about that. So we'll pass the turn. Our opponent with no fetch land so far, so this Stifle hasn't been very useful. And the more creatures they play out, the less likely it is that our spells resolve. So we're in a bit of trouble here. I think the Mentor is uncounterable. And with 4 creatures in play, I don't think we'll be able to get enough mana. Stifling this doesn't make a difference because they'll be able to reactivate it on their turn. That should be game. We'll play out Fae of Witches as a chump blocker. This can absorb 3 damage. Our opponent does have lethal on board anyway. So, good game. They had just enough interaction to prevent us from comboing. So you don't see many merfolk in Timeless, but the Hexcatcher is a tremendously powerful tool, especially if you have the creatures to back it up. We'll show them what we have in our hand. And they had another Hexcatcher, so we were never going to win this one. On to the next. This hand is missing fast mana. Only has Stifle for interaction, no counter spells. We are on the play, so we could potentially clip a fetch land. We don't really want Fae of Wishes in our opening hand either. I think it's a mulligan. This we can try. We'll throw back one of the Lorien Revealed. It does have access to 3 mana, and then a Show and Tell and a Traxa, as well as turn 2 mana drain. No play from our opponent. We'll go grab another island. And then here we'll just keep up our mana drain. Depending what our opponent does on their turn, if we're not under any pressure, then we might want to wait on making a play. And I think we do wait. Bowmasters is fine. We actually don't draw that many cards outside of the Seagate Restoration. And if we know to play around it, then we can usually avoid lethal. Guide of Souls is fine. And then Ocelot Pride, I think we do need to counter. So here we will Ponder, it sees the most cards. And then Omniscience will definitely be the take. No shuffle. Then we will put the stock up under Chromox. That was a mistake. I didn't see the floating mana. We would have loved to have stock up in our hand. Hopefully we go unpunished. Doesn't matter what they target here. They'll deal 1 more damage to us. Then we'll Atraxa. So we'll actually take the stock up first. Sink into stupor too. We could have bounced the Bowmaster. Going back and revisiting that, if we take the sink into stupor, then we can take the Seagate, the Atraxa, one of the lands, and we would be able to draw through our whole deck at that point. That one was in the books. This has a bit of fast mana. Turn 2, we would be able to cast our Show and Tell, though we have nothing to put in off it yet. I think we'll give it a try. We can also stock up on turn 2. We'll hold the Chrome Mox for now. Against the Gigantha strategy, we're not expecting Chalice of the Void. Usually indicates energy decks in Timeless. Omniscience, probably the best card we could have flipped here. So this will be a really quick win since we already have the Fae of Wishes in our hand. Just looking to dodge Static Prison. Guide of Souls won't do it. So we'll take a card from outside our deck. We'll grab another card from outside our deck. We'll grab a third card from outside our deck. Now we'll return the 2 Masterminds. We'll grab the second Sun. And then we'll grab the second Sun from our deck. And our opponent concedes. Here we have a bit of fast mana. Ponder to go digging. And Atraxa already. We'll keep this. We'll hold up Stifle on turn 1. And then turn 2 we can try and ponder to look for our Show and Tell. We will stifle this. And our opponent concedes. No fast mana here. Turn 3 would be a stock up. First turn digging for something. It has to be a mulligan. This is better. So if we always keep Island, Sink into Stupor, and Chrome Mox, then it is between Stifle and Stock Up. We'll put back the Stifle. If we draw into any other blue card, Stock Up might be better to keep in hand to imprint to the Chrome Mox. That way, once we play Omniscience, we'll have some immediate action and we won't have to pass the turn. We'll play Island and pass. Up against an Oops All Spells variant, and actually the Ancient Tomb means we don't need to imprint anything. So we'll cast Show and Tell. We do need to hit something off our stock up here. Our opponent will likely put in Spy. Now since this is happening on our turn, their ghouls won't come back. So unless they have the Reanimate package, this should be a victory. Just double check here for Thassa's Oracle. They don't have one. So we can even sink, but we'll stock up first in case we get a Seagate. And we do get one. Dig through time. See how many cards we have to play before our opponent concedes. Lorien, stock up. These are all 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s. Atraxa, another Lorien. Play out the Atraxa. And our opponent concedes. They had no chance of winning this one after we played the show and tell. Alright, so there you have the deck. Before playing the games, I was a bit on the fence whether or not Stifle would be useful in the current meta, but after that dominating run, I think it should definitely stay in. Notably, it is useful against cards like Strip Mine, Balustrade Spy, and then it can also be used to protect our Omniscience from cards such as Static Prison if our opponent puts it in off of our show and tell, which is one of the few ways that this deck loses once it starts the combo off. Overall, I was extremely satisfied with how the games went, and the deck felt extremely powerful, being able to combo off as early as turn 2. There are a handful of different show and tell variants out there, so I'm not saying that this is the best version of the deck that you can find, but in the games we played today, it definitely performed very well. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.